Hello and welcome. You are listening to Nails and Hammers, a podcast where we talk to people about their journeys and understand how they take decisions and solve different problems. Our guest for today is Mark Coles, who is a professional cricket coach from New Zealand. We chat with Mark about his childhood, his dreams of becoming a professional cricketer, his personal struggles, his journey to Pakistan to coach the women's cricket team, and finally his suggestions on getting better day by day, hour by hour, minute by minute. We hope that you enjoy listening to this episode as much as we enjoyed talking to Mark, and it's time to listen and learn. Hi, Mark. Welcome to the Nails and Hammers podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
And so, before we begin, what are you doing these days, and how's the pandemic treating you?
Well, it's been interesting, hasn't it? We've all been through some interesting times in 2020. Hopefully, we never have a year like this again. But we've moved over to the Sunshine Coast from New Zealand. We did that in February, just before the pandemic hit. And in recent times, I've just taken up a part-time role, very part-time, but director of cricket at Sunshine Coast Cricket Association. So it oversees all the cricket on the sunny coast from the middle of sort of Caloundra area all the way through to Gympie and beyond. So it's quite a big area, but it's very enjoyable and keeping me reasonably busy.
Oh, nice. So, yeah, could you tell us how? So, we'll start from the beginning of your life, probably. So, could you tell us where did you grow up and what did you study when you're growing up? How did it all start?
Well, I grew up in a very tiny little suburb in the capital city of New Zealand, Wellington, called Lyndon, which was a very, very, probably only about 5,000 people maybe back then. And that was where I first sort of had my first experience of growing up. And it was way back, as far as I can remember, was Dad, really, who obviously was playing cricket and was a decent cricketer in his time, played for Wellington. So that was my first memories of cricket and how I got the love for the game.
And so, what was it like growing up as a son of a cricketer?
It was pretty hard because Wellington, even though it's the capital of New Zealand, probably was only at that stage when I was growing up 300,000 or 400,000 people. So not many when you consider it the capital of a country. Mm-hmm. So it was difficult. Everybody kind of knew that Michael Coles was playing for Wellington and ended up playing for New Zealand A. And you quickly became the son of Michael rather than Mark.
Right.
So when you got introduced to people, it was, so you're the son of Michael Coles rather than your own personality, I guess. So that was quite hard for me to deal with. And then there was obviously the expectation, perhaps of me following in Dad's footsteps and beyond. And I remember the early ages, probably around 9, 10 and 11, where people used to say to Dad, gee, he's going to be a better player than you. And that, I guess certainly was going to be a better batter than Dad because he was terrible. But I suppose that sort of put a little bit more pressure on you as well.
So, who were your early heroes growing up, except your father, of course, early cricketing heroes?
Well, Richard Hadley, definitely. And then, I sort of thought, when I got to teenage years, I think Martin Crowe was obviously a really good player. And I was lucky enough to be in the same squad. And Martin was captain of Wellington back then when I was in my early teens. So I sort of experienced what he went through and how the New Zealand public was very, very hard on him as well. And I could relate that to my own sort of experiences, not quite at that high level where everybody used to throw stones when he didn't make any runs. And then when he did make runs for New Zealand, he was sort of expected to. So I kind of related to that, the pressure that he was under in a much smaller way, I guess.
So you obviously had cricketing aspirations. And so what happened when you realized that you weren't going to make it as a cricketer? And how did that affect you?
Oh, well, unfortunately, as a young teenage boy, and then I started to have some back issues, and the realization of the dream of playing for New Zealand probably wasn't going to happen around about 17 or 18, maybe 19. And so then, you know, bars and things came into operation for someone like me, and I grew quite fond of bars. Bars sort of became quite fond of me, and particularly my wallet. So my bank account wasn't very big, but my drinking account was quite high. So that wasn't very good for me. And as I've always said, you always find someone that wants to have a drink with you, unfortunately, when you get to that stage. So I found friends quite easily. They're probably just, maybe some of them weren't the right people to hang around with at that particular stage for me, looking back. But when you're in that situation, they are your good mates. So that sort of took a toll. It took a toll going into my coaching career as well. I coached for the wrong reasons, I think. So I coached to win all the time, and then when I didn't win, the spiral happened, and I didn't sort of realise that I wasn't in control of not winning or winning games of cricket. So it wasn't really me. It was the 11 blokes out there, and did I prepare them well enough? Sometimes I did, and sometimes I didn't.
So what was your motivation about going into coaching? What were other things you did when you realized you weren't going to make it as a cricket player? So how did coaching happen?
Well, the injury happened when I was about 27, 28, the realization that I wouldn't, if I continued on with my back, then I wouldn't be probably walking by the time I was 60. It was quite a painful injury, and still to this day, you know, I've just been lifting a couple of things, and it causes me some grief from time to time. So,
and so you were a fast bowler.
Well, I thought I was. I think all fast bowlers think they're really fast, but I don't know. I was quick enough, but I wasn't the fastest. But look, I think that realization, and I knew that umpiring wasn't for me, because every time a bowler appealed and hit the batter on the pads, if I was umpiring, it was probably going to be out, because that's what I thought when I bowled. That, you know, if it hits the batter on the pads, he's clearly not good enough to hit it, so he's got to be out. So that wasn't an avenue that I was going to go down. And to be honest, I wouldn't have been able to stand that long for that long period of time. So I had to keep moving, otherwise my back gets pretty sore. So then I thought, well, coaching is probably the next best thing. So I didn't want to score because my concentration wouldn't be long enough. So coaching was the next best thing. So I sort of went down that path.
Right. So what made you choose Pakistan? How did you go to Pakistan? How did that happen?
Well, I was watching them in 2017 at the ODI World Cup, and they were getting beaten by every single team. Sri Lanka beat them, everybody beat them. They were just the easy beats. And I had worked in Perth at the Western Australian Cricket Association, so I contacted, and I was infrequently in touch with Mickey Arthur, but
I think he was the men's coach, right?
Yeah, he was. So I sort of flicked him a message, and he came back to me reasonably straight away and said, look, there are some issues, and I think the fit would be really good, you know, that it's probably what they need, and I'll have a chat to the chairman, which at that stage was Najim Sethi. Anyway, a call came in one night, and I thought it was a crank caller. But it ended up being a guy from Pakistan, and then I had to explain to my wife Mel, who had only just been married for probably a couple of weeks, 3 weeks maybe, that that wasn't a fake call, and that I would be heading to Pakistan within a month after getting my visas. So that was an interesting time. Interesting discussion.
So how did your family react to your news of saying that you wanted to go to Pakistan?
With terror. Well, they were concerned because you know, Pakistan has probably a reputation of not being that safe, and friends that knew me really well knew that I was slightly crazy, but this confirmed it for them. So I had a little bit of explaining to do. And to be perfectly honest, I remember going up to Auckland, which was an hour's drive from where we were living, and being absolutely petrified. And I needed Mel to go to the Emirates counter with me to actually really get me through the first process of getting on the plane, because I was a quivering mess. And even though I knew when I was coming back that I sort of had this tour for about 4 or 5 weeks, it was still pretty terrifying. So anyway, I got on the plane, and it was the longest 17 hours I've ever spent in my life to get to Dubai. Squashed in, it was about 55D way down the back of the plane, and squashed in with 2 people either side. Again, my back not being very good. It was, by the time I got to Dubai, I was just like a little wee sardine in a tin. I had to uncoil myself. And then I had a little stopover, and the next minute, 2:30 in the morning, I was on a plane full of Pakistanis that were kind of looking at me like, what's he doing on this plane? He's bought the wrong plane. What a fool. And then we sort of landed in Lahore at 2:30 in the morning, and it was hot. So having left New Zealand, it was like September, late September, which is still pretty cool, about 15 degrees. And then landing in Dubai firstly was pretty hot, but then landing in Pakistan, the wave just hit me pretty hard at 30 degrees in the middle of the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning. Holy heck, I didn't know what had hit me. So that was an experience.
I think it was 54F according to the news article. It was,
yeah. I knew it was way down there. It certainly wasn't at the front in the really nice seats. I knew that because I walked past them with great envy, thinking you've got an easy ride here. 17 hours later, it was pretty sore.
So how big was the culture shock? Had you ever been to Pakistan before in your life? How big was the culture shock of this landing in Lahore?
Yeah, no, the closest to that side of the world that I'd been was Sri Lanka. So I kind of knew a little bit how hot it was going to be, but I certainly didn't know the culture that I was going to be facing. And I didn't really know how the girls would react to me. And I did get an email from a lady that was going to meet me at the airport in Pakistan. When I landed in Dubai, I found out that she no longer worked for the PCB. So that was another little part of the equation that took me from sort of terrifying to absolutely terrified, because I thought, well, who's meeting me at the airport? If this lady no longer works there, who is picking me up at the airport? Anyway, so then the first couple of days, I was getting my head around, the culture, the heat, what I was going to eat, what was healthy, what wasn't, meeting people. And then that was the first 24 to 48 hours. And then I had to meet the girls, which was terrifying for them, but even more terrifying for me. So we got put on these bulletproof buses with armed guards everywhere. There were more police than I'd ever seen in the whole of New Zealand, basically, around me.
Oh.
And driven 45 minutes out of Lahore, and into a beautiful, beautiful area, a country club, which is where our camp was going to be. We dumped our bags, and then we were told that there was going to be a meeting at 5 o'clock, and I sort of walked in, and they were all sitting there. So they'd obviously been pre-prepped, get there early, right? Make sure everybody's there early. And I walked in 10 minutes before, and there was this sea of 30 girls just looking at me. And I could see some of them whispering away, thinking, this guy is an idiot. What a fool. What a fool. I mean, he's taken over this team that we can't even win a game, and this bloke's over here. He's not going to last. So, and then the new lady that I'd only just met, she said, okay, Mark, well, the floor's yours. And I thought, well, I don't know. I just didn't know what to say. What do you say? And I sort of put together Assalamu alaikum, which was very poor. And that looks like, I think I know what he means. And then I started my conversation saying, look, I've got no idea what's gone on before and the issues that you've had. But I can tell you one thing, we're going to work really hard. Every time we play, we're going to try and get better, and we're going to have some fun. And if at the end of it, whatever happens, then let's just see. And we're playing New Zealand in 4 or 5 weeks' time in Dubai. So we'll just give them we'll just try our best and see what turns out.
Mm-hmm. And so, like, how did you overcome the cultural barriers and the communication barriers while conversing with the team?
I was very lucky that Sana Mia had a really good grasp on English. So she was, because the first part of that conversation, I think most of them were looking at me like, he speaks really fast. I didn't even hear when he said hello. I couldn't make that out. But so she was a great help. Bismar was reasonable at English, but Sana was probably the best.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, day one, we had our fielding session, and it was about, 11:15, and I was talking to one of the other coaches, and I turned around and the girls were sitting down on the ground. And me being me said, girls, there's no time to sit down on the ground. We've got a lot of things to do and a lot to get through. And then the coach, the batting coach, said to me, that's prayers. So that's what happens. They take time out to pray. And I thought, oh, okay, well, that's the first mistake that I've made, one of many. So I said, oh, okay. So from then on, I started to get the understanding of when the prayer times were. And I think probably one of the things that I am proud of was I really started to understand the culture, which gave me a feeling of when things happened and Eid and all those types of things and how important it was for them. So it was understanding their backgrounds a little bit more. So that probably helped me a little bit, and embracing it too, I think. So I always used to make sure that at around that time that we would always, when the loudspeaker came on, that we would, the call to prayer, that we would do that as well. So I would sit down too.
So did you have a plan going in of what you wanted to do with the team, or how did that change when you realized that these people, they don't have the kind of facilities that New Zealand cricketers do? So again, I read in that article, you're telling people about those girls didn't have proper shoes to wear, or some of them didn't have support from the families. So how did that make you feel?
Yeah, but that was the first thing that took me by surprise, just the lack of real facilities that they had. The lack of basic equipment, cricket balls and things like that the girls had to buy themselves, which I didn't know about until a little bit later. And so that really did surprise me for an international team. Like, if you imagine that we were playing New Zealand, they don't have to buy their own cricket balls, and most of them are all sponsored, whereas our girls were given cricket bats for hand-me-downs from the guys. And then as time went on, the ones that came from lower socioeconomic areas, and one in particular, she just had completely the wrong trainers in terms of her size, and her cricket boots were too big for her. So, we just went out and got her a pair of trainers. I just said to our strength and conditioning coach at the time, I said, I can't do this. I can't have someone turn up training and try and do a yo-yo test with a shoe size that's 2 sizes too small. So we've got to give her the best chance to succeed. So we went down to the local mall and just bought her some. And then we went and got her some cricket boots as well. So he got some cricket boots from England. So that was a very big surprise for me, because a lot of international teams, as we well know now, just get given their shoes and bats and don't have to worry about paying for cricket balls. So that was something that we had to adjust to. But again, I think that made us a little bit stronger, that we were underdogs, and we knew that we were. Before we even took the field, we were battling a lot of elements. And that just, I think, made us a little bit tougher, I guess, that we had to band together and we had to be one. And we knew that things weren't the best for us as they are for the men. They were getting better, but they still weren't the best. So we just had to stick together as much as we could.
We just want to talk about your coaching experiences a bit. So coaching is a very lonely journey. So how do you find happiness in this process?
It is. Look, I knew that when I took it over that there would be some really lonely times for me, because I didn't know the culture that well. I would often, maybe I'd meet some of the players for dinner, but I'd find that they were talking in Urdu, and I didn't really understand a lot of Urdu. I could make out some of it, and as time went on, I sort of made out part of the conversations. But I didn't really want to change them and make them feel uncomfortable that they had to speak in English all the time. So I found myself doing a lot of things and by myself and preparing for the next day, which was probably quite handy because it gave me a lot of time to prepare for the next practice or understand our opposition. So I could do a lot of that stuff. Found myself ringing home a lot and talking at home and Skyping and et cetera, et cetera. So that was good, but it was lonely too. And when, going back to the NCA, when Mickey was around and Grant Flower was around and Grant Bradburn, that was good because I could go out with them places. But when on tour, it was pretty lonely. Although Jamal Hussain came on near the end there. So he'd obviously played county cricket in England and was very good at speaking English and Pakistani. So we used to hang out together, and Andy Richards from Australia was there for a while. So that was quite good too. We always used to go out for dinner together. But I didn't want to make the girls feel that they had to speak English because I was around, and I just felt that they needed their own time anyway. So it was some lonely times.
So coming to the on-field performances, do you sometimes get frustrated when players don't perform according to expectations repeatedly? How do you manage that? If a player is not doing, how will you expect them to do?
Oh, look, I think I learned a lot about my coaching over there because you have to understand the individual and where they've come from. And I think the battle was getting out on the field. So demanding that they score more runs or that they played a poor shot, we've got to, and we go back to the facilities, the bats, the gear and things. It was about caring for them and encouraging them and being positive and just trying to make their roles very, very clear so they understood what their role was. I think that was a really, really important part of our success, that the little bit of success that we had was giving them very clear game plans and then allowing them to play that. And look, if it goes wrong, that's the game of cricket. We play the hardest game in the world. So we have to understand that sometimes it's not always going to be right. But when they lost, I don't think it was a browbeating exercise. It was about how do we get them to forget about that loss, learn from it, but then in 2 days' time be better than what we were and really try and improve. So asking questions is a really good thing, and getting them to try and come up with the answers was probably one of our things that we encouraged a lot in that group.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like when the team loses, the coach must have a lot of negative emotions. They must be overthinking. So how can you motivate someone when you yourself are not so happy?
Yeah, well, there was a couple of times that I did it, but there was one time in Dubai when we played New Zealand, and I just felt we were so close. We lost the first ODI by 7 runs, and then we really got beaten in the second ODI. And I just felt that the girls had gone back again. So they were very confident after the first, but we should have won the first one. Just with a lack of experience, we missed out. And then New Zealand played really well and beat us, and Devine and Bates got runs. So I was sitting in Dubai in the hotel, and I thought, well, I can't really go for a drink with my friend alcohol, because that's not a great thing in Dubai, and I wasn't really into that at that stage. But the one thing that I did like was ice cream, and I knew there was a really good ice cream place. So I thought, I don't want to be lonely anymore. So I called a team meeting, and I was quite stern in my message. I said, right, everybody meet downstairs, 7:15, all staff included. And so down they came, 15 girls and 5 staff, very timid looking at me, and what are we doing and where are we going? I said, just follow me, we're off. And then we ended up in the mall and at this ice cream place that we'd been to for dinner a couple of nights beforehand to start the series against New Zealand. And they were all looking at me, and I said, I'd already pre-organised it with the guy. And I said, right, chocolate, strawberry or vanilla. Those are the 3 flavours that he had. And they looked at me like, he is crazy. This guy's not going to last. Like, he's going home at the end of this. We won't see this bloke again. And they said, free, mufta. And I said, yes, mufta. So So anyway, strawberry was reasonably popular. Chocolate was the most popular. Strawberry was pretty popular. Vanilla, not many takers on vanilla at all.
Yeah.
And that was it. I just said, then they looked and said, is that it? And I said, yeah. Well, what do we do now? I said, well, there's 1,000 shops at this place. You can either go shopping, go back to sleep, or do whatever you want to do. But meeting's over. And that sort of just, I guess, got rid of the disappointment, and was just one way of just forgetting about things, and knew that we had a big game against New Zealand the next day. And we won for the first time. About this time last year, this time 3 years ago, we beat them. And it was a great day. You know, that day I'll never forget, because it was almost like for these girls winning the World Cup, because they'd been beaten 7, 8, 9. We'd been beaten 9 times in a row. It's a 10th time lucky. And they happened to win this game. Well, I've never seen anything like it. And so it was a great feeling. And then we did it again when we'd been beaten badly in Dubai again by the West Indies in the first ODI. But some of the girls that had been to Dubai for the New Zealand series, they knew. They said, we're going for ice cream, aren't we? And I said, we have to wait and see. And so they caught on. And then strangely enough, for whatever reason, we won that series too. So I don't know whether it was the ice cream or something. There might be something in that. But it was just a way of really getting rid of the disappointment and just saying, let's bin this and get on with it. And then, the sun will come up tomorrow, and we all liked ice cream.
Okay, so that's a good segue to the next part of this we want to move on to, is Mark as a person. So what do you think is the purpose of life? It's just a very vague, broad question.
Oh, look, I think, as we've talked about before, 2020's come up with some really big challenges for humans all across the globe. And who would have thought this time last year that some countries are in lockdown and everything. But look, I think really you've got to enjoy your family, and I think just try and be. I always used to say to the girls, if we can just be 1% better individually every day, whether it's cricket or life or whatever it might be, and then if you're in a team situation and you've got a squad of 15 on tour, then you're 15% better as cricketers, and then as a group you're 15% better as a team. And so that, or 1% better as cricketers, 15% better as a team. So that really, I guess if you just can, you're always going to make mistakes. And some of the mistakes that you make, and I've made a gazillion mistakes. But I guess if you can learn by them, some of them anyway, and then just keep moving forward and being the best that you can be. And I always say to my daughters when they go off to school, just be the best you can be. That's all you can do. That's all you can do and ask for.
Yep. And we want to talk about some of the dark phases of your life as well. So how did leisurely drinking turn into alcoholism?
Well, I think I'm probably maybe a binge drinker. So I'm if I get into an area where there's fun times going ahead, that's a very dangerous situation for me. So if I'm around the family, then I'm okay. But if I'm around an area where there's a group situation, it can be quite a dangerous thing for me. And I guess when you go through disappointments in life, as I said previously, I just touched on it, it can be the one thing with alcohol, it never argues with you, and it's always available in New Zealand and Australia and other countries. So it's always accessible. But it's not a great thing. It doesn't, at the time you think that it solves your issues and your problems, and winning, losing, bad form in cricket, things that go on in everyday life. But it long term, it's A, it's not great for your health, and B, it's not a solution to your problems. So, and I think these days with the situation that we're in, we really need to be mindful of things that are going on, and try and solve your problems in a different way. Maybe ice cream's the solution.
Right. So, what do you think was the lowest, the darkest point of your life?
Oh, probably before I went to Pakistan, I got into a really bad space. There was stuff going on at work back in New Zealand, which was probably, when you look back, I think really out of my control. And I got into a very, very bad, dark area. And again, alcohol played a massive part in that, and took me to a place that I just really made some decisions that things weren't going to be any good, and I might as well have been out of here than being in here. But thankfully, Melanie, my wife, and saved me really. And then, as I've publicly said, that I honestly believe that for whatever reason and whoever and whatever, that decision to type out that email one day to Mickey, and then for that phone call to happen, and for me to get on that plane, and then for the next 2 and a bit years of my life to go backwards and forwards and be associated with some young ladies that every day had their own issues, not only cricket, but in their own personal lives, certainly saved me and gave me a greater enjoyment and a greater understanding of life, and how lucky we are to live what we do every day, and to be able to play this great game, and certainly build better relationships with people than I'd ever done in the past. So that I'll always be thankful for. The fact that I met these 30 young ladies across Pakistan, I'll always be thankful for as well. And I always keep in touch with them, and how they're going, and will always support them and watch out for them, I guess.
So, what are some of the biggest lessons you got from them?
You know what? That even when they were facing their dilemmas in their own personal lives and their own battles with their cricket, and sometimes the battles that they had with the organisation, although that's changing obviously with Wasim Khan, and there's done a great job now to get it around. But previously, before that, it was a little bit helter-skelter. That they were always happy, and they always wanted to come to cricket, and they always wanted to get better, and they always smiled, and they never really were that angry or anything. They just wanted to play cricket, and in fact, a lot of the time you had to try and stop them, because they just wanted to keep practicing and practicing and practicing and practicing. And my old energy levels were getting lower and lower and lower and lower. So we sort of had to put a cap on practice sometimes, but that's what they loved and that's what they wanted to do. Fitness was a little bit different. They weren't so keen on that, but not many people are though. But look, I think it was just the joy of them, seeing them every day and their smiling faces, and the fact that some of them were really battling in their own personal lives with their own family situations. And cricket was, in fact, for some of them, cricket was the money earner for some of these girls, for their families.
So you took a major life decision of moving to a country I've never been to before, basically on a whim. You didn't really know a lot about it, and you just went on. So would you do it again if you had the chance? And would you recommend other people take major life decisions like this on a whim?
I would do it again. I'd do it obviously somewhere else, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, or potentially other places. But I would do it again, because for me, it helped me, and I always felt that I was giving back to the game, and trying to get players better. So I always thought, and I knew that every day that I had to be happy, even though I might have been missing home. I was 18,000 kilometres away from home with a 7-hour time difference. But I always knew that I had to get up, even though I might not have been feeling my best, and things were getting on top of me. So I just felt for me that it was the best thing that I've ever done. And I always felt great pride and reward and that I'd contributed at the end of a practice or at the end of a game or at the end of a series. So for me, that was a really big thing.
Right.
And then, like, who are some of the people in your life you're most grateful for?
Your parents, you know, I mean, there was a lot of talk about dad, but mum was the brick in the wall, so to speak, in a nice way. I don't think she'd like me calling her a brick, but she was the stable base around cricket. You know, she did a lot of carrying and dropping off while I, you know, to dad and watching him and putting up with cricket, and she doesn't like the game, strangely enough. But she, you know, in later years, she's followed me and what I've been doing with the girls, and you know, I hope that I've made them proud. I certainly gave it my best shot, because I've probably disappointed them throughout some of their life, but hopefully these last 2 or 3 years I've been able to make them proud of me and appreciate the things that they've done for me, I guess, to get me where I am at the moment.
And like lastly, like, so if you could go back 7 years, what would you tell yourself?
Oh, that's a really good question, Kushal. Well, I think I'd say that there's always a bright side of what doom and gloom is. You've just got to battle through minute by minute, hour by hour. And I don't think when you're in a place where things aren't so good that you can look too far forward. I think you've just got to look and go, right, what am I going to do in the next hour? And one thing I would say is do things that will make yourself feel happy. Now, whether that's go for a walk, have a coffee, have your favorite ice cream, whatever it might be, try and do something for yourself that's going to make you happy. But I honestly believe that you will get through things, but you've just got to break it down and not think too far ahead, and try and think that while it might be disappointing, you're in your really bad space at this point in time. One door closes, there'll be something that'll open, but it might take you a little bit of time. So to get through to that period of time, minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day, week by week, and then something will happen. I always believe that good things happen to good people. Karma. Karma's a big thing. You are what you feed the universe sometimes.
Right.
And we are at the last section of the podcast, so it's a rapid fire segment. I mean, so like, you just say whatever that comes first to your mind. Your favorite Pakistani dish.
Chicken biryani.
Right.
Biryani. And the other favourite dish, which I'll just tell you a very, very quick story about. I don't want to waste your time. The little wee sugar balls. I can't remember what they're called.
Rasgulla? Or?
Gulab jamun.
Yes, gula. Yes.
Gulab jamun.
So on this first tour of New Zealand where we were staying and we were on the camp and things, the girls said, you've got to try this dessert. Fantastic dessert. Very sugar. Do you like sweet things? I said, love sweet things.
Yeah.
Love them.
Yeah.
I had 6 or 7 of these things.
Oh.
Yeah. They're good, yeah.
Oh, they're good, all right. And then I went to bed and I thought, right, I'm really, really tired. Well, I thought I was really tired. By 4 o'clock in the morning, I was still wide awake.
Oh.
And the girls then said to me the next day, I said, what, you know, those things that I had left, those really nice things. I said, how much sugar was in those? Oh, they just laughed. I said, girls, I was up till 4 o'clock in the morning. I could have been going for a marathon and still been going. I've never, so I was then very cautious from that moment on, only to have 1 or 2.
Yeah.
But my word, they were yummy. And that syrup and that, oh, wow, they were good. But not so good if you wanted to go to sleep.
Right.
So, but that was a really sweet dish, and obviously the biryani was a really good one too.
Yes. So how do you like to unwind?
Not by doing that. No, look, I love watching cricket and all sports. I think family's really important now, and just spending time with the girls and trying to stay off phone calls and social medias and things like that, which can be hard, I guess. But trying to spend time with them, and because I've missed a few birthdays and Christmases and things like that, I think quality family time is really important too. And after 2.5 years, trying to get back into the family life and routines and things, and understanding that you get told off a lot by putting clothes down in the wrong places, and put your laundry away and all of that sort of stuff. So I'm getting used to that now. It's taken me a while.
Yep.
But no, it's great. Family.
Your favorite cricketing ground?
Oh, my favourite cricketing ground. Well, Pukakura Park in New Plymouth in New Zealand. I was lucky enough to play there. Beautiful little ground in New Zealand. I love it. The Basin Reserve is another, obviously, in Wellington, New Zealand, and my home ground is a favourite. But I was lucky enough last year, before I left, I was hosted and said goodbye to at Gaddafi Stadium when we had that disastrous Pakistan versus Sri Lanka, and Pakistan lost 3-0 to Sri Lanka. But a 80% full Gaddafi Stadium, the atmosphere is wonderful, electric, and I'll never forget that. The real intensity of Pakistan, and they're just so, the loyalty is just unbelievable. You don't get that in New Zealand with cricket crowds. Probably English soccer crowds would be a comparison, I guess. And the ups and downs and the ebbs and flows of when someone doesn't make any runs, that they're not very good and they should be not selected. And then I guess when they do make runs, they're the best player in the world and should have always been in the team. So just that real passion and enthusiasm and loyalty that.
And just speaking of intensity a bit, how was watching India versus Pakistan like?
Well, very briefly, we played India in the Asia Cup in Kuala Lumpur. And I remember I just said to the girls, look, let's just relax here. It's just another game of cricket. And I remember Sana coming to me and she said, Mark, you're wrong. This isn't another game of cricket. This is it. This is it. She said, you'll be surprised. Tomorrow, that stand in Kuala Lumpur will be full. I said, Kuala Lumpur? No. Capacity's only 5,000. Well, it was full. With about half an hour to 40 minutes to go, the place was chock-a-block. And wonderful, the drums, the music, the flags, everything. And at the end of the game, look, we lost. We didn't play very well that day. But even in the West Indies, when we played them at the World Cup, I think, bar maybe the final, that was the biggest crowd. And that was in Guyana. I thought, no one would turn up. All of a sudden, there's people everywhere. And certainly in KL, they had to call more police because they'd underestimated the crowd. So all of a sudden, more Malaysian police came, and there were dogs everywhere, police dogs. But just such a cool atmosphere, even though we were on the losing side. It was just such a cool atmosphere. And I just really, really wish that is the biggest rivalry in cricket. And it breaks my heart that can't be, for the sake of the two countries, that it just can't be resurrected and just play cricket, because it just generates so much interest in the world. Look, I would sit and watch Pakistan versus India for hours, just for the entertainment value of seeing people in the crowd. I know that we can't do it at the moment with the COVID situation, but they have to be the two most passionate countries in the world when it comes to cricket. So I'd love to see that happen again. I really, really would.
Yeah. So anything new you have picked up during the last 6 months, a new hobby or something during lockdowns?
Oh, look, I listen to a lot of podcasts, so I'm going to listen to a lot of Hammer and Nails at the moment, I think. I'm very interested in what you guys are doing. I think that's fantastic what you guys are doing. I really do. I think it's great. So I'm going to start listening to your podcasts. I think go for a lot of walks now to give me peace of mind and center myself, and listen to podcasts and people speaking, and just try and stay as positive as you can in the situation that we're all in at the moment. I think that's really important. And then, as I said before, I think just trying to get through day by day, and then maybe something might open up for me, and I'd like to think that I'd be able to contribute to maybe another nation, and with the experiences that I've had, and just keep building relationships with people, and appreciating people for what they are and who they are, I guess.
Your favorite place in Pakistan?
Oh, now that's interesting. My favorite place in Pakistan. Well, I spend a lot of time in Lahore. I think that's a beautiful city. I think Karachi is a really wonderful, vibrant city. It never stops. I like that. Islamabad, I felt, was a really pretty city. And Multan up in the mountains was quite, had its own uniqueness, and some really, really pretty parts. Look, I just wish I'd gone to the northern parts of Pakistan, because I think that is, from the photos I've seen, Diana Baig lived in Gilgit, and I just love saying Gilgit, love it. But she showed me some photos of where she lives. Oh, wow. It is the closest thing that I've seen to New Zealand in terms of the countryside, but I think even more prettier than New Zealand, and in terms of it, just really a lot of it hasn't been touched. And I just think Pakistan is a lot, it's underestimated, the beautifulness of the place and the people. And look, I'd go back. I would have no fear in going back to visit, and just meeting up with people again, and trying to get up into that northern area and experience the beautifulness of where that is.
Okay, so again, so from the players you have coached recently in the past few years, can you tell us some of whom who can make it big in the next few years?
Well, look, Sana was probably, I mean, I know that she's retired now, but she was a real, she's the pioneer, obviously, and ended up becoming #1 bowler in the world, which I think was a great credit to her, to work really hard and get back from being criticised as captain after that terrible World Cup to being #1 a year and a half later. Nita Dars obviously played in the Big Bash last year, the WBBL. She's a very, very talented certainly T20, and getting to understand her one-day game. But this girl Riaz is a good player, Alia Riaz. She's one of the stronger girls in the Pakistan setup. She's a really good cricketer, another T20 player that can hit a big ball. Muniba, a little left-hander, I think she's starting to find herself now a little bit. Iram Javed hits a really big ball. So there's some of the talented ones coming through. And then obviously you've got Bismar Maroof, who, is a consistent performer, and Javeria Khan is a consistent performer. But in terms of excitement and younger players coming through, I think Riaz, Iram Javed, Aroob Shah was the girl that I think really started to come into her own in terms of this young leg spinner. 16, 17, I think she might be now. And she's one to keep an eye on as well. So there's a little bit of excitement in Pakistan. If we can get the systems in place quickly and up and running, then they've got a chance of certainly pushing some of the big teams. If the systems aren't in place and there's no real pathway, then there could be some issues for them.
And the last question of the podcast. So if you had to step into someone's shoes, who would that be?
In terms of cricket coaching?
Anything.
Oh, look, I've got a lot of guys that I find really interesting in the coaching circles. I think I'd rather, I think I'd rather step into my own shoes when I was younger and then start again with what I know now. So I don't think I'd want to be someone else. I think I'd want to be myself, but go all the way back to when I was 5 and understand that being the son of someone isn't, you just got to be your own person and try and fix up the mistakes that I've made and be what I am now, which is a better person than what I was 5 years ago, 3 years ago. So
wouldn't that be amazing?
Yeah, I guess we all kind of think, God, if only I could do that. Oh, I'd do that differently, and that differently. But I don't think I'd want to be anybody else. There are certainly periods of time in my life where I just thought, oh, no. But I think back now where I think, if only I knew what I knew now, back then I would have changed things. But I think I'm reasonably happy.
All right. So, this is the end of the podcast. Thank you, Mark, for your time. And I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did talking to you.
I did. Thank you so much for having me. And I look forward to following you two guys now and love, as I said, what you were doing before. Just fantastic that you're making a difference with people. And I really appreciate the fact that you're very humbled and appreciate the fact that you've got me on. And all the very best. I hope it's not the last time that we keep in touch either.
Of course.
Sure.
Yep.
Shukriya.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.